Hello and welcome to At the Leadership Table with retired Major General Jim Hoyer. Oftentimes people hear the word leader and they think only of political leaders, but leaders come in many forms, and that's worth exploring. I'm Jim Hoyer, born and raised in West Virginia, a husband, a father, a new grandfather, and a retired military leader, serving for over 40 years in public leadership for our state and nation. Now, the most important mission I have going forward is to educate, motivate, and empower our next generation of leaders. At the leadership table with me today is Mandy Curry, and Mandy is the co-founder of Healthy Kids Incorporated, a company dedicated to helping families raise healthier children through meal planning, gardening, and wellness education. Mandy's also the co-founder of ventures like Start a Garden and Business Uplifted. She also hosts the Mandy Curry podcast, as well as the Spiritual Connection Show, where she shares insights on personal growth, family wellness, and conscious living. Clearly, Mandy is very busy, doing a lot of great work at the community level. And as we like to talk about on At the Leadership Table, it's those community-based leaders that really make an impact on our state and our nation. So, Mandy, thanks for joining us at the Leadership Table today.
Thank you for the invite. It's great to be here.
So I'm going to start by asking you the same first question we ask all of our guests. Please share with us a standout moment when you learned something really important about leadership.
For sure. So my background started, I spent 20 years in the corporate world. I was in banking prior to starting Healthy Kids Inc. and this whole venture of entrepreneurship. And during that time in banking, I have a finance degree here from WVU, and so I was very focused on leadership that whole time, taught leadership programs. It was just a big part of my whole wheelhouse, and read so many books around it. And then when I pulled away from the corporate world and started into entrepreneurship, I just kind of felt like leadership was maybe evolving into something different. And I really wanted to create, under Healthy Kids Inc., this new form of leadership. And that's what we have done here. You know, we have a team of 20, but really we wanted to keep the hierarchy very flat, if you will, and to not have layers. And I'm in the culinary world, so, you know, and sometimes in those worlds, you have to wait for someone to die or retire before you're able to move up into the next role. And that's very common in a lot of leadership positions. And we really wanted everyone to be able to grow. So there isn't a whole lot there's not really any hierarchy. And man, I tell you, that's very different for people to get used to. And so this is my personal social experiment to see if leadership, how this works, a flat hierarchy, very little hierarchy. And so we've been playing with that for now 4 years, and it's interesting to watch how everyone, there's a lot of struggle kind of around that, because I think people are so used to having somebody tell them what to do, and then to be able to just kind of find your way is very different.
Right.
And so I often question, what am I doing? Is this the right thing to be doing? But I feel intuitively this is what we need to be doing because everyone can really grow in this model. But I question it all the time, and whether that we're really doing the right thing. And last week, I had a small group of 8-year-olds come to the kitchen, and we put them on a small project, and it was very simple. We asked the 3 of them and this was unscripted. We just needed help, truly. And they came to the kitchen for a field trip, and I asked them if they could help us put labels on these 400 meals. And they were doing it, and I just sat back and watched them. And they self-organized themselves perfectly. Nobody told them what to do. They figured it out themselves. They put 400 labels on a meal in 15 minutes, where I'm pretty convinced it would have taken other people an hour to probably do that, or the generation above them quite a bit longer to kind of figure it out. They did it with no instruction, and they just self-organized themselves. It was self-leadership in action. And I felt like, oh my gosh, this is it finally. Like maybe that's the generation where this type of leadership comes into play. It's very exciting.
It is. And I focus a lot on talking to people about how important community-based leadership is to resiliency, both for the growth of our state, but for our national security. And it's going back to the roots that I saw in growing up next to my grandparents, that greatest generation from World War II, who were that way. And I think what you're doing with Healthy Kids and creating that community-based leadership and resiliency is so critical to what we need as a state and a nation. So if you would, please tell our listeners a little bit about what inspired you, which part of that we just talked about, to form Healthy Kids Incorporated. But most importantly, I think it's really important for people out there to understand what this is doing for our communities and for our children.
For sure. So Healthy Kids Inc. started 15 years ago. At the time, my husband and I, we live in Bridgeport. This is where we grew up. But at the time, we were living in the Charleston. We were actually in Putnam County at the time. We had small kids. Our children were 2 and 4 at the time. And we were going through our own personal health journey, trying to understand, just like you mentioned for your, for your grandchildren, we were at that same phase, wanting our kids to eat healthier. We were working very busy jobs and struggling ourselves. So we wanted to create something that would help us and help other families in the same position. And in my mind, I felt like if we had access to a registered dietitian that could show us what to eat, if we had access to a chef who could show us how to cook it, and then a busy mom, and dad who could just help to like pull all that in under our world, I felt like that was like the trifecta that would really help. And so we began to create that. And that was right around the time, if you remember, when Jamie Oliver came to town. If you remember that, yes. And he was filming the Food Revolution. So I was, kind of a county away from that experience at the time. But it was very interesting to watch all of that unfold in the southern part of the state. It brought a lot of attention to a lot of our challenges that we had around healthy food and access to food. Maybe it brought a little bit of a negative light to it as well. But we were in our own little world trying to kind of make all that happen. So that's what inspired us. The company had many iterations over the years. About 6 years ago, though, we had tried so many things to help families and kids eat healthier. We worked with a lot of nonprofit partners in West Virginia, cooking classes. I mean, you name it, we have done, it feels like everything to try to move the needle, and nothing was working. So much so that I stepped out of it for a little while just to try to come up with a new perspective. So a good friend, her name is Dr. Jamie Jeffrey out of Charleston. Her organization is called Keys for Healthy Kids. And she had this idea. We were partners on many projects. She said, you know what, we've tried everything. We've just got to cook for the kids. We just have to make the food. We've done everything else. We try to teach them, buy their groceries, do everything except go into their homes and cook it on their stove. Let's just make the food. And so she worked with the Benedum. The Benedum Foundation provided a very large grant for her to be able to explore this concept. And so we spent 2 years researching it, working on the feasibility, testing to see what other places outside of West Virginia were doing. And we felt very confident that we could do this. And so Morgantown became our first pilot 4 years ago. And that was our first launch of this concept of a central kitchen. So could a central kitchen help childcare centers? Some may also call them daycares, but we call them childcare centers because we wanted to get to the earliest ages possible, 0 to 5. If we could start then, we felt like the kids had the best chance of success if we were able to get their palates adjusted to eating vegetables and to healthier foods and not as much sugar, that's going to carry with them their whole life. And so that's what we started doing. And that launched here out of Morgantown. We brought in a chef team to help us create it. And we have to follow national guidelines for these meals. So it's very tricky. These meals are all made from scratch. We are using, chefs, we're using local foods, but we have to follow the national guidelines that say you have to meet all these. Well, that's pretty easy for us because that's just our values and beliefs anyways. I mean, we would never use food dyes. That's just not the world that that's just not our value. Local foods and farmers is very important to us too. And so we've built this, and and we started out feeding 80 children. There was a child care center, Sunbeam in Fairmont was our very first one, 80 children. And now we're serving, in just 2 weeks, we'll be serving about 1,500 children a day out of this, going all for North Central West Virginia. And then about a year and a half ago, we opened up the second kitchen, and that's in Huntington. And it's going to be serving, in that around those same, 500 to 1,000 as well a day. It's pretty exciting.
So it's not just about producing healthy food. You also have to do the supply chain piece of this. You've got to get the product in to cook it. You've got to be able to package and deliver. So talk a little bit about that, because that's just an amazing piece of itself.
For sure. The logistics is really tricky of this, but it has been the biggest blessing. So what we are learning is, even just working with the local farmers and being able to pull that produce in, that local produce comes in over the course of, let's just say, 4 months. But we'd love to be able to use it all year long. And so a big part of our efforts have been, well, how do we preserve that produce so that we can then begin to use it year round? And the kids are still getting that nutrients all year round. And so we have focused a lot on that in the last 2 years to try to hone that process. And we're learning now why it's because we are doing the same thing that the schools are doing, we understand now why schools have such a hard time with this. There are so many barriers to this. For one, it's just the price alone. If I were to buy, a case of tomatoes, because we make all of our own sauces. So tomato sauce, all homemade. If I go buy the tomatoes just through your normal purveyor, whether that's Gordon Foods, Performance Food, whatever that might look like, US Foods, we're talking maybe it's $1 per pound. Local produce, it's double or a little bit more of that. So we have the cost alone of that being double. Then you have to turn it into that product. So we have the labor involved in all of that, and then the storage, where you can see why a school would just want to open up a number 10 can.
Right.
That's a lot of the challenge that we have. And so it's opened up our eyes to all of these gaps in the food system. And so now what we are working on is to begin to help to even beyond what we're doing with Healthy Kids to start to fill those gaps. Because we see them and we live them firsthand, and we know how hard it is just for us to be able to process these fruits and vegetables and beef and those types of things to work with that. So we are in the process of creating, so one example of a way that we're filling that gap currently. In our kitchen, in just one kitchen, we go through 50 dozen eggs a week from local farmers. And our team cracks those all by hand. So you can imagine that's an hour at minimum that we're spending cracking eggs. Well, a school wouldn't have time to do that. And which is why it's very hard to get local eggs into schools, hospitals, hotels for all of that reason. Many of them will use a liquid egg product somebody's already done that. So they just get it in a liquid form and they're able to put it into their dishes. Well, there's no processing plant like that in West Virginia. And so we got together with some partners and said, well, let's create that. Sometimes being naive is a blessing. Sometimes. So we said, well, let's go create a liquid egg processing plant. And so that's what we're doing. We've now been a year in the making on this, working with partners. The plant has already broken ground, and in about 16 to 18 months, West Virginia will have its first liquid egg facility, working with the Department of Agriculture, some other really great egg producers in Hardy County and other areas across the state, working to really build that up. and we'll be able to actually have a liquid product that goes to schools, goes into the healthy kids meals, hospitals, restaurants, whatever that looks like, prisons if so. We'll have a liquid egg coming from West Virginia farmers.
Which is part of that national level resiliency that starts at the community level.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's our dream. We want to bring that food system home. We have to bring it. That's national security. Food security is national security.
Absolutely.
We have to bring it home. And so right now, if those Hardy County egg farmers are already producing those eggs, but someone from out of state is buying them, and those eggs are going out west or wherever. Now we're going to have a West Virginia company buying those eggs from West Virginia farmers, and it stays and goes to West Virginia organizations and seniors and children. That's us bringing the food system home. And that's just one example, but that's a great gap that we're working to fill.
And that's a tremendous story and a great start to the things that we need to do. The other thing that I learned about your program, and a number of us retired military folks have gotten involved with the food banks, particularly around veteran food insecurity, but also I learned in the years of responding to state emergencies that you've got to get kids back in school quickly because we have so many children in this state who rely on that breakfast and lunch in the school system. Part of what you guys are also doing is addressing that food security and that food insecurity issue. And, in the state of West Virginia, just at the numbers that we know of, over 260,000 people of the 1.7 million people in this state are considered food insecure. Tell us a little bit about how Healthy Kids also addresses that food security piece for these young children.
Indeed. So we even believe it's a step, even in addition to that, it's nutrition security. So even those who are getting the food, it may not be nutritious food, and it might just be empty calories. So it could be chips or processed foods that maybe hold them over for 30 minutes, but it's not going to sustain them. And so we believe that is also a very important part. We know we have to meet their most basic needs, get them fed, but now we feel an obligation to go to that next level. Let's get them fed well. Right. And so that's where we're at. And so a big part of food security for us, and so about a year and a half ago, we wanted to expand our hot meals. So everything that we are sending out currently in the last 4 years has been hot meals. We wanted to be able to expand that and be able to reach more parts of the state, and to also expand to include adults too. And so we went out and we got our manufacturer's license, and we started creating a frozen meal that we could send out. And that became our partnership with Mountaineer Food Bank, and others too, Facing Hunger Food Bank as well. And we began to work with them. So we just wrapped up last week in Huntington. We produced 25,000 frozen meals that went out to children this summer, to kids, as a part of the summer feeding program. And it was a full meal. So whereas perhaps maybe in the past where it might have been a shelf-stable meal, which is that's fine, that's feeding them, this was the next level of that nutrition security. And this was a fruit, a vegetable, an entree item. We were really proud of that. It's a lot of work to produce those under inspection. This was under USDA inspection. And then in Morgantown, we are under the West Virginia Department of Ag state inspection for those meals. That is a way that we are working to fight, this food insecurity across the state. And some of those meals went out to veterans too. We started recently also working to create a medically tailored meal for adults, because we know that heart disease and diabetes are our two biggest factors that our adult population, and now even kids, are working with. And so we now work with our chef team, and we work with registered dietitian, and we create a healthy, nutritious frozen meal that they can receive. We've been piloting this now for almost a year in many different parts of the state, and we're seeing really great results from it, and that's really exciting too.
Absolutely. So you have taken this to the level of food as medicine.
Thank you for saying that.
Right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of what West Virginia is doing with food as medicine. Sometimes we lag behind in initiatives. Not in this initiative, though. There are some across the country who have pioneered this. I feel like we are right there with them. We have groups all across the state who are focused on it, trying to figure this out. We've been in pilot with this too. We have a few evaluations that we have currently, thanks to some really generous partners like the Benedum Foundation, who has helped to fund this, and others too, who are able to. We're able to assess that, yes, using food in lieu of medication is helping. And in this case, we've had patients who have been able to reduce their medications as a result of it. That's a big deal. So there is still a lot of infrastructure to build out around this food as medicine, but I feel good that in the next year, collectively as a state, because everyone is working together, we're going to start to really make some great progress.
So sometimes it's the simple things that we look past that can make a big impact. What is, from your experience, and particularly the work you do with the podcast and the show, what's one or two simple things that somebody that's listening could do to just make a slight change in lifestyle that would have an impact on their health?
Oh, for sure. Well, I always say it's eating as much, fruits and vegetables and just local foods as you can. I mean, looking at the back of food labels is pretty eye-opening. I mean, food manufacturers are pretty clever, and what is on the front of the package is a very different story from what's on the back of the package with that food label.
The picture versus the label, right?
For sure, yes, for sure. And so that's the hardest part, is you got to flip that over and take a look at those ingredients. And then once you do, that's really the true story. That alone, I mean, just making those types of choices in the grocery store will go a long way in someone's health. It's, again, you wouldn't think that you would see these types of things like food dyes in food for kids, but it is. And we're getting this cleaned up now, which is really great. I think great progress is being made, and it's also drawing a lot of attention. I've had more people asking me about food dyes lately, and this is schools or childcare centers or whomever. I mean, the word is getting out, and people are beginning to, awareness is key, and that's what will create change and personal change. And the food manufacturers are stepping up too to make change, which is a big deal. So I think that that's a big part of it. And then I also think, again, pulling that food system back home, looking for your local, your local farmers, your local, we call them like value-added producers. There are a lot of people out there who are raising the chickens and making the breads. And as much as we can buy local, I think that's really pretty special too. Feels good. Less ingredients, less processing. It's pretty great.
Very good. So you guys have you've taken on food insecurity by including the significant importance of nutrition in how that improves that, as well as being able to deliver those healthy meals. You've taken on the distribution process, being able to bring people together at all different local levels. So what can our listeners do to help you continue to grow this movement across the state of West Virginia to help us address nutrition, food insecurity, food as medicine? How does somebody get in touch with you to donate resources, but maybe more importantly, to volunteer or start the movement in their local community? How do they reach out to you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can reach out to me many different ways. Social media, of course, email. I can share that with you as well. It's just Mandy@healthykidsinc.com. But yes, it's a perfect time because I feel like that is what is moving the needle. I truly believe we are moving the needle. We are starting to move the needle. And it is because so many people are coming together in the state, and we have all been kind of working in silos for many years, but now we're starting to see all of that come together, and that's creating a lot of change. in a much quicker way. And I feel like we are starting to build pockets of infrastructure to really begin to expand this. And so I think that, for those who are interested in our work, we are, for us, it's a matter of just expanding right now to what the capability and potential is. I mean, that's more kitchens, that's more, more locations, more chefs, more, drivers, more, all of that as we begin to expand, more farmers, working with all of that. So beginning to pull all those pieces, together and finding those people and those places that are interested in wanting to create this. And it's pretty special. We have 2 kitchens, but each are very different, and we love that because they begin to be their own little community kind of hubs and maybe even food processing hubs across the state. And we see that there's going to be many more of those.
Well, I greatly appreciate, and I know many other people do, particularly the people that are the beneficiaries of your work, the leadership that you've shown. Particularly at that community-based leadership level and making a difference and an impact in what you and your husband started. But I think you guys also demonstrated one of the most important qualities of leadership, and that is perseverance, because you've been at this for a long time. So thank you for what you're doing in the local North Central communities, but now across the state of West Virginia and making West Virginia a better place. And thank you for joining us at the leadership table today.
Thank you, General. Yes.
Thanks for listening. This has been At the Leadership Table with retired Major General Jim Hoyer. Did you know you can now find me on social media at RMG Hoyer? That's HOYER, or email me at rmgjameshoyer@gmail.com.